I am Carol Breslin from Leave the Rest to Carol. It is absolutely my pleasure to talk to you guys today, and I wanted to thank Chris and Denora for inviting me to speak with you tonight. I am a 35-year child care veteran. Thank you. I have done child care both in center environments and home environments for 35 years. I have got 5 grown children of my own, ranging in age from 28 to 37, and I just got my first grandchild, so this is very important to me. When I did childcare, I focused mainly on social and emotional skills, and I found that the number one barrier to having exceptional social and emotional skills was a lack of sleep. So this is doubly important for me. It's very hard for me to be able to focus and act appropriately when I'm overtired. It's no different for children, and children need a lot more sleep than we do. Sometimes we don't realize just how much sleep they need. I am going to give you the 7 most important sleep tips, and I'll just get started. The number one sleep tip that I would give you is that babies and older kids need to learn how to fall asleep on their own without any external props. And for a baby, a prop might be a bottle, the breast, a pacifier, rocking to sleep. For a toddler, it might be rocking to sleep, laying with mom and dad, things of that nature. All props are going to be external and not internal. Every baby, every child has the ability to fall asleep on their own. It's just if they use a prop, then it's very difficult for them to fall asleep without that prop every time. So we'll get into what a prop does and how it affects sleep later. But my number 2 tip is that consistency is key. For example, when I go to bed, I need to be on the right side of the bed. I need to have one leg sticking out. I need the fan on. I need my water glass next to me. And when things aren't exactly right, I find it hard to fall asleep. Can I fall asleep? Sure, I can, but it makes it uncomfortable. So consistency is key. There's like a brain and body connection that needs to happen for sleep. In the crib, there should be absolutely nothing other than a tight-fitted sheet and no toys, no under a year. I'm talking about no toys, no blankets, nothing. For infants, I'm super, super sensitive to safe sleep habits, so I recommend laying on their back to sleep, no blankets, no loose, anything in the crib. The bed should be, for any age child, the bed should only be used for sleep. There should be no toys, no, other than a lovey or a favorite stuffed animal, one blanket for a 1-year-old or older. But consistency is absolutely key. The 3rd tip, early bedtimes. An early bedtime will prevent overtired and miserable kids and provide time for parents to reconnect after they've gone to bed. We forget that we need those couple hours, that adults we need those couple of hours of downtime at night without crabby kids, overtired kids. One of the things that I've been reading a ton about lately is the similarities between overtired and ADHD. Having worked with a lot of older kids, I'm terrified by the number of kids or the jump in kids being diagnosed with ADHD when it could be just a problem of sleep. The symptoms of ADHD are almost exactly as the same as overtired symptoms. Sleep begets sleep, and overtired promotes poor quality sleep. So you're going to find when a child gets overtired, that's when you run into night terrors, nightmares, things of that nature, the night wake-ups. because they're overtired and they just can't seem to get caught up on their sleep, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. A bedtime should be right around a child's natural body clock runs to about 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for their best, most optimal time to sleep. And there's actually a natural dip in their circadian rhythm right around 6:30, 6:45, and that's when their body releases the natural hormone melatonin. So the closer you can get to bed at 7 o'clock, the better off you're going to be, because you'll be riding that natural wave of melatonin. If you go too much past that natural boost of melatonin, then their body thinks, oh, it's not bedtime yet. Let me pick them up again. Let me give them a little boost of energy. And that's when the second wind happens. That's when nighttime meltdowns begin. Once you miss that natural dip, you're kind of in trouble. Bedtimes can be adjusted by maybe half hour or so, but I wouldn't go too far out of the 6:30 to 7:30 range, with optimal being 7 o'clock. There are a lot of parents that think if they put their kids to bed later, they're going to sleep later, and that's not true. That 7 to 7 window is really what you're looking for. The fourth tip is routines, bedtime routine. In all my years of working with kids, everything I know about kids, I've learned from kids. Their bedtime routine needs to be in exactly the same order every night. When a child doesn't know what to expect next, it leaves them feeling super insecure. It leaves them feeling frustrated. It leaves them feeling like they have no control over anything, and that also causes meltdowns. I recommend at the beginning of every bath or every bedtime, I recommend starting with a nice warm bath. And if the baby's got sensitive skin or the toddler has sensitive skin, just don't use soap every night. But that nice warm bath kind of cues their body and brain that, oh, bedtime is coming. It's time to start slowing down. Time for that melatonin to start getting into their system. Once they've had their bath time, gotten pajamas on, brushed teeth, diaper change, everything else, maybe go into their room and have a really great bedtime routine, like books in their room, sing a song, do a prayer if you do a prayer before bed, but do all that in their room and make sure that it's a super happy time. That should be some really good quality time for you and your child to bond and enjoy time together. Screen time should not happen in the 60 minutes prior to the bedtime routine. If a screen emits a blue light, and there's a ton of research on blue lights also, blue, white, and green, any of those colors are stimulants to the brain, and that's not what we're going for at bedtime. If your child has a nightlight in their room, if you need a light to go in and check them or change a diaper, or they need a light, make sure that it glows red, yellow, or orange. And you can remember that by thinking the colors of the sunset. Okay, sunset, bedtime. Those colors will promote melatonin production. Speaking of melatonin, every client I've had, I always ask, have you spoken to your child's pediatrician or their doctor about your sleep issues? And almost always they say yes, and that the doctor recommends that they try melatonin. The problem with that is that melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone, and they have not done a lot of research. There's not a lot of long-term research or the research on the long-term effects of giving a child melatonin. And I personally have a problem with goofing around with hormones. Hormones are they have melatonin. They produce melatonin. There's no reason to add a synthetic melatonin to put them to sleep. And melatonin only gets a child to sleep. It doesn't keep them asleep. So it doesn't help with nighttime wakings or anything like that. So I'm not a big fan of melatonin. When we're going through the bedtime routine, both parents should participate, either do it together or take turns, so that your baby or your child can get used to other people. Like, It shouldn't always be the same person, because then that same person never gets a break, and the baby's not, or the toddler, the child never gets used to someone else putting them to bed. And that kind of can throw a wrench into changing a schedule at any time. And we want the kids to be adaptable, being able to fall asleep. Our goal is that they can go to bed and just fall asleep and stay asleep. That's how they get all of their rest. Nap time routines should just be a shortened up version of their bedtime routine. Skip the bath, but make sure that you're reading a book or doing whatever it is you do for your nap time in their room. That will help. I would do it in a dark room in their bedroom, because that's where their sleep happens, and if they're used to that, that's perfect for them. Naps generally take a little bit longer to master, but it's not difficult. It just takes them a little bit longer to adjust to naps. Skipping naps. That nap time routine was tip number 5. I'm sorry. Tip number 6 is skipping naps and having late bedtimes is going to impact the next 24-hour cycle. And I would even go farther than that. For little ones, I would say it's going to impact the next 24 to 48-hour cycle for sleep. Skipping their naps is not the answer. It gets them, again, overtired, and then they're running on that second wind, which is really hard to come down from. Better daytime sleep will make nighttime sleep just that much better for your child. I always say that daytime sleep needs to be honored. Some sleep consultants will say that after 3, you should stop naps. One thing that's going to affect when you drop naps completely for a child is whether or not they're in childcare. And I think that something that people forget is when your child is home with you, they know what to expect. They're not learning. I mean, they are learning a ton, but they're not learning socializing skills with other kids and other teachers. And like in childcare, it takes a child a lot of brain energy to figure out how to interact with other people, how to interact with friends, how to solve a fight, how to solve a problem, and they're running a lot. I mean, if you see one child is active, when they get in a group of 5 or 10 children, they are supercharged, and they're really tiring themselves out. So they will need a nap for until they're older. Tip number 7, if you're feeding during the night, don't let the baby fall back to sleep at the bottle or breast. Maybe when you get them up to feed, this is for a really early baby. After about 4 or 5 months, there's no physiological reason that you need to feed in the night. But if you want to, if you're nursing and you want to keep feeds in, just don't let the baby fall asleep at the bottle or breast. Keep the baby fully awake, maybe change their diaper, strip them down, feed them, keep them fully awake, and keep the lights low, and then put them back down fully awake so that they can fall asleep, learn how to soothe themselves back to sleep on their own. One of the things that I always talk about with putting a baby down or putting a child down after you've rocked them to sleep or nursed them to sleep or whatever is, I always think about that meme that I've seen on Facebook of someone trying to lay sticks of dynamite down into a crib, because that's almost how it feels. You have a sleeping child, you gently lay them down in the crib and then try to sneak yourself out from under them. And when they wake up, when they wake up from something like that, they didn't fall asleep in that position, they didn't fall asleep in their crib. It's very difficult for them to figure out how to self-soothe themselves to sleep. Think about if you fell asleep in your bed and woke up in your backyard. It's kind of the same thing. It's startling, it's disturbing, and it would be very hard. I mean, you wouldn't be able to fall back to sleep in your backyard. You would need to get back to the situation that you fell asleep in the first place, which is your bed. So that's part of the consistency too. One of the things that I always talk to older kids about is that sleep cycles go from very light sleep into deep sleep into very deep sleep. During that whole time, that's about an hour, maybe an hour 15. That's when their bodies are doing all of their growing and all of their healing. So kids find that fascinating, and they really, like, when a child understands that, they're pretty serious about getting sleep because they want to grow, they want to heal, they're invested in making sure that they stay healthy. After that 60 to 75 minutes of light to very deep sleep comes their REM sleep, and that's about 15 minutes, and that is where their dream sleep happens. It's where their brain reorganizes everything they've done throughout the day and gets them ready to laying down the stick. I know. So their REM sleep reorganizes their brain and makes room for new learning tomorrow. So that's also a critical part. But when I talk to older kids about that, and it helps you guys too, is they have basically an hour and a half to 2 hours each cycle lasts. So they dream, or they dream. They have about 6 sleep cycles every night, and when they're going to wake up is at the end of that REM sleep. Everyone rises to the surface at the end of that 1.5 to 2 hours, whatever your sleep cycle is, checks your surroundings to make sure everything is the same, and then if it is, you can go back to sleep. So if your child is going to wake in the night, it's going to be between sleep cycles at that time. So that's why it's so important to have a consistent environment for them. Kids also, big kids, or I would say 3 to 5 year old kids, find it absolutely fascinating that they get the opportunity to dream up to 6 times a night. And with those kids, I'll have them think intentionally about what they'd like to dream about that night. And kids love that. They love being super intentional about, I'm gonna have a great dream tonight. I want to dream about blue butterflies. I want to dream about playing at the park. You know what I mean? So that helps with their sleep too. Some ways that lack of sleep affects how kids learn is because they're not getting the REM sleep that they need. It limits their planning and organizational skills. It worsens their mood and behavior. It reduces their focus and attention, and it hampers their memory. These are critical things to kids, and so that's why I take their sleep so very seriously. That is about all I've got for your 7 tips, and I want to make sure that you all know how to find me. I'm on Instagram at Leave the Rest to Carol. I'm on Facebook, same name, Leave the Rest to Carol, and on the internet at leavetheresttocarol.com. And if any of you are struggling with sleep with your little ones, I am happy to help. That's what I do. I am a sleep consultant, and if you basically on my webpage, my Instagram, my Facebook page, I share tons of tips and tricks. I do question and answer sessions where you can ask me a question, I'll answer it. That's all fine. But if you need personalized, it's basically coaching and support, accountability, helping you, writing your sleep plan, going over it with you, and then helping you succeed in getting your child to sleep. So if you think that you'd like to have more information on that service, go ahead and send me your email address, and I can send you a document that will talk to you exactly about what sleep training is and how we would work together to make that happen. Should a 1-year-old be sleeping through the entire night? Absolutely, Chris. A 1-year-old has got the ability to sleep from 7 to 7 and have, let me see, I'm looking, probably, I would say minimum 1 nap a day, could be 2 naps a day, probably 3 to 4 hours of daytime sleep is perfect for a 1-year-old. If they don't sleep through the night, waking up usually around 3 in the morning almost every night, has a bottle and goes right back to sleep. It's just that he's hungry. Do we need to feed him more? Nope. I think that he does not need to eat. If he needs a bottle at night, what time does he have his last bottle before bed, Chris? And does he fall asleep on his own in his crib? Usually right before bed at around 8. Okay. How long are you waiting before you go in when he wakes up? He falls asleep on his own after his bottle. Okay. Maybe try to extend the amount of time that you're waiting before you go in to give him that bottle. And actually, I would just put him in bed at 8 with a bottle. Feed him before he gets in bed. As like, if does he take a bath? If he, like, for an example bedtime routine for you, Chris, might be 7 o'clock bath, pajamas, diaper, whatever. Get into his room, feed him his bottle, make sure he's staying fully awake, not any drowsiness at all, and then read him his book, sing him a song, do your good night, Chris, or good night, baby. I'm sorry, Chris. Good night, baby. It's time to go to sleep. Put him down, and then just let him go to sleep. And then when he wakes at 3 a.m., really try to wait him out. If you can handle a couple 3 minutes of crying, wait that. Go in, rub his tummy or his back. I guess if he's a year old, he might be flipping over and sleeping on his tummy. But we don't wait long, only a few minutes. Try to make it a little uncomfortable for him. And I'm not saying leave him scream. I'm saying try to extend the time a little bit each time that he wakes, so he's not waiting for you to give him a bottle every night at 3. I don't think he's hungry. You might give him solids right before he goes to bath, but that's probably dinner time. But honestly, I would move his bedtime up a little bit to 7 if you can, and try to push that morning bottle out to 7 o'clock. It might take a little bit longer and longer and longer each night, but really 7 to 7 is your goal. So, and he does not have a physiological need to eat in the night. It's just become a habit. Is my guess. So, I'm concerned because the baby wakes up screaming, always like scared. That could be night terrors, Denora. Remember when I said that a lack of sleep could cause night terrors and nightmares? That could be part of the problem if he's waking up. And when he's waking up really scared, pay attention to whether his eyes, are you connecting with him, or does he have a vacant look in his eyes? That's how you can tell the difference between a nightmare and a night terror, and both are caused by overtired. I understand how disturbing it is when a baby wakes up like they're terrified. My son had night terrors. That's 35 years ago, and I did not know about this, and he was probably overtired. That's probably exactly what was going on with him, but it was terrifying when it was happening, and I fully understand that. So try for the 7 to 7 bedtime if you can get it, and your little guy, Chris and Denora, should be getting about 3 to 4 hours of daytime sleep as well in order to get enough sleep for his little tiny body to do all of the learning and growing and healing that he needs. If a baby is already used to having a pacifier to go to sleep, you can wean them off. I mean, there are ways to wean them off. And I would ask, do they lose it in their sleep? Is that a reason for them waking up? If they can find it themselves, then it's not that big of a deal. But if they fall asleep with a pacifier and lose it in the night, and that's the reason that they're crying and can't soothe themselves back to sleep, that's when it might become a problem. And that's when I would suggest definitely weaning them off. It's not easy. It's kind of painful, actually, for both you and the baby. but it can be done. And I mean, it's only painful for a night or two until they get used to it, until they figure out, oh, I can do this without the pacifier. Awesome. It was really great to talk to you guys tonight. I hope you had a lovely evening. I hope you and your kids get all the rest you need. Have a good night. Bye-bye.